my mom, what she would do is she was always talking about how much she didn't have, and so she would try to come up with ways or ideas to try to make ends meet. And some of those ideas were, she would make burritos, and she would want my brother and I to sell them at school, and for me, that was kind of embarrassing. I didn't want to be selling burritos, or I didn't want people to think that we were poor and that's why we were having to do this.
David, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well.
Yeah, the best name in the world.
I do, actually. So do you.
Thank you. Appreciate
you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate that you're giving us the opportunity to interview you. So how old are you?
I'm 38.
38. And where are you from?
I'm originally from Arizona, Tucson.
Perfect. What is your favorite thing about Arizona?
My favorite thing about Arizona, I really have to leave this place in order to appreciate a lot of the good things that, Tucson in particular has to offer. But I'd probably say that my favorite things about Tucson would be the mountains, most definitely, and the dry weather here.
Do you have any specific mountain that you really like?
Probably the Catalinas. There's just something about waking up every day and being able to see the Catalinas. They're so big and they're there, and it's just home. I remember growing up and stepping outside. The house that I grew up in faced north, and that was the first thing I saw every time I walked out of my house was the Catalina Mountains.
Beautiful, man. Now, what do you do for a living?
I'm a behavioral health. I work in behavioral health.
Oh, wow. What is behavioral health? I've never heard about that one.
So it's basically working in the field of mental health, mental illness, working with people who have mental challenges, so it's a challenging job. It's not for everybody, but I really enjoy what I do, and I like to help people.
How long have you been doing this for?
Roughly about 4 years.
Okay. What is something challenging about your job?
Everything.
Yeah.
Everything. Oh, man. I mean, it could be dangerous at times, especially in the place where I work. There's times that you have to be on your toes at all times. You never know when you're going to have to defend yourself. You never know if you're going to have to defend one of your coworkers or a patient. So it's that kind of an atmosphere. But I like it because I'm on my toes. So there's always something going on.
Now, what is your favorite thing about your job?
But I get to help people.
What social class were you growing up?
I would say probably between low and middle class. And the reason I say that is because I bounced back and forth between my mom's and my grandparents. My grandparents lived a simple life, but yet they had everything that they needed. My grandfather was a hardworking man. He was a very educated man, and he made sure that they had everything that they needed. So when I lived with them, I had everything that I needed. Not everything that I wanted, but everything that I needed. During the times that I lived with my mom, we didn't have enough. We lived in the projects. We lived in low-income neighborhoods. My mother was on Section 8 and food stamps, and I remember I grew up on the government cheese and all that. But then my mom, when she met my stepdad, things changed a little bit. So my stepdad had a good job, and so we ended up moving out of the place where we lived, and we moved into a better place, which was more middle class. So I would say more towards closer to my teenage years. My life was a lot better than how it was when I was a kid.
Wow. And definitely there were a lot of challenges then.
Oh, yeah.
Do you recall any main ones, many specific things that you had to do? I mean, I know you mentioned that you had everything you needed, but not what you wanted. Was there something that you recall? They're like, oh, I would have had this.
I never had video games. I remember during the time, kids had Nintendos. The NES was real big. I want to say maybe in the late 80s, even in the early 90s, the Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, all those games in the 90s, that were popular. I used to have to go to my friend's house or like a neighbor's house to play video games. But the cool thing about that time too is that they had arcades at like Circle K's or convenience stores where we could just walk and put a quarter in. So I spent a lot of time there. I would go there to play video games. But I guess if there was something that I really wanted that I didn't have, was that like what are they called? NES, which is the Nintendo. I can't remember exactly what it stands for.
All I remember
Console.
Oh, okay.
Game console. A bike too. I never had a bike. I never had a bicycle. My grandfather actually bought me my first bike when I was 12, but I wanted a bike from like since I was 6, 7 years old. So I would, borrow my friends' bikes and stuff. I'd get to ride them around for a little bit. But so those things, I never had those things that a lot of kids or most kids had, which was, bikes, video games, and things like that.
Man, that's probably a little tough. But how about now?
It was. Oh man, I went crazy. And after I got older and I started having money, I went and started buying myself a whole lot of expensive things. When you see a lot of people who grew up poor, they didn't have a lot, and then all of a sudden they come into money. You see them very flashy, so you see a lot of like the rappers and or people who win the lottery and and they go and they're wearing all this jewelry and expensive wardrobes. So
now, would your family talk about money in general?
Yes. So my mom, what she would do is she was always talking about how much she didn't have, and so she would try to come up with ways or ideas to try to make ends meet. And some of those ideas were, she would make burritos and she would want my brother and I to sell them at school, and for me, that was kind of embarrassing. I didn't want to be selling burritos or I didn't want people to think that we were poor and that's why we were having to do this. But my mom would try to push us, like, no, sell these burritos. And then she came up with ideas of like, well, maybe buying Mexican candy and you guys can sell them at school. And we did that. And it was actually really good. People would come to us because they knew that we had the Mexican candy. But even with the burritos too, I remember I stood outside of this church and I had a bag full of burritos. And I told him that I was selling burritos. Carne con chile burritos are actually really good. And for me, it was a long shot. And I sold them all within like 10 minutes.
Oh, man.
And then I started going back. And I told my mom, people really like them. So then next time I went back with 2 bags, so.
Wow. Do you remember the profitability of that?
I don't remember. I remember there were big burritos, but I think they were maybe like selling them like $2 a burrito maybe. And I'm talking like, this was maybe close to 20 years ago, maybe.
Okay.
Or more. Yeah, something like that.
But they were fairly popular and you would always run out of them.
Yes.
That's good. Do you recall your first interaction with money?
I do, yeah. My grandfather gave me $5 before we went to in tianguis, which is the swap meet. And my grandfather used to love going to the swap meet, and I used to love going with him. But I remember I was really young. I was a huge Michael Jordan fan growing up, and he gave me $5, and I thought I was rich, and with that $5, I purchased a Michael Jordan card, and so that was probably my earliest memory, buying something that I felt had so much value.
Do you still have that card?
No.
Do you know what happened to it?
I don't know. I used to collect a lot of cards, like basketball and football cards, And I used to have like these big folders where I would store them, but I can't remember what happened to them. I don't. Maybe I sold them. I don't remember. It was a long time ago.
Now, what is the best financial advice you have ever received, and who gave you that advice?
To be honest, I didn't have a lot of guidance when it came to that growing up. But the closest I can get to that was my grandfather always told me that education was so important. He said, make sure that you get an education and everything else will fall into place after that. And my grandfather always used to tell me that knowledge was power. So the more you know, the more you can do. And that's just the advice that my grandfather always gave me. Like, David, get an education, pursue an education. It's so important. So that was the advice that I had growing up from my grandfather.
Besides that, was there any other good financial advice?
Growing up?
Yeah, or in general, like maybe as of right now, so that you've learned in the past year, or, during your teens, even as a kid?
I mean, I think I just on my own, I kind of started to figure things out. I would listen to other people. I would hear other people. I would pick up as much as I could and then apply it to myself. So that's probably the best answer I could give you.
Alrighty, is now on the other side of the spectrum, what is the worst financial advice you've ever received, and who gave you that advice?
The worst financial advice, I still can't come up with an answer for that.
Really?
Yeah.
You haven't had anything like that? You did mention when we had our call that you would always have close friends that will get into debt, and that you were actually quite scared to get into a similar situation.
Mm-hmm.
What was that scary part that you got to see?
The fact that, I would see people get into debt, when they would get credit cards or go get a loan, and then they wouldn't follow through, and then they'd end up in a lot of debt. I never wanted to do that, so I always told myself, I'll get a credit card later when I'm ready to start building my credit. Right now, I'm not going to do that. Or once I felt like I had a good, secure job, because my purpose and the way I looked at it was, if I'm going to finance something or purchase or even get a credit card, it's going to be for the purpose of building my credit, and so thankfully, I never been in any type of debt when it comes to that. And that was just because I was too afraid.
Yeah. So you would always pay cash for everything, or?
For the most part, yeah.
Okay, that's pretty good. Do you recall, just to wrap that question, what your friends and family would buy? Why? What were the items that they were purchasing that would make them go into debt?
It was cars and credit cards.
Okay.
I remember, I'm not going to say any names or anything, but there was this one person in particular who bought a really nice car. And then after a while, this person lost their job and they couldn't pay for the car. And so they were constantly having to hide because they were trying to repo her car. And so I was like, man, I never want to go through anything like that.
Sometimes we learn more by watching than by other people telling us. So I think that was kind of like your experience then. That's great. Now, what is the best financial decision you've ever made?
The best financial decision for me was just really learning how to manage my own money, and saving money. So kind of living like I was broke. So I'll pay off my bills. I'll pay the things that I need to pay off. And then I'm putting the rest away. So like I said, when I was growing up, I didn't have a lot. So when I got older and I started working, I went a little crazy at first and I started buying a whole lot of expensive things. And then I was always broke. And then I said, no, man, I can't do this. And so instead of doing that, instead of using my money to go have fun or buy myself things, just put it away. It's like, doesn't even exist. It's not there. Paying my bills, paying for what I need. The rest goes into a savings account. And I started doing that, and throughout time, by the end of the year, I'd end up with a good chunk. And then after a while, I just kind of learned how to just pick for a good time. I want to take, let's say, my mom out for a nice dinner or something. I'm going to take this out and take her, but I'm not going to go crazy and do this, make a habit out of this.
When did you realize that you were not pretty good with your money, or like you didn't have a budget?
It was, I started to fall behind on bills after a while, and I didn't have that luxury to call someone and say, hey, can I borrow money? So it was just I was just always on my own.
So the breaking point was pretty much when you realized that, oh, wow, I cannot ask for help. I'm on my own. I have to go on with it.
Yeah. So I had to figure out with ways, in Spanish, we call it maña, of how to figure things out, because I don't want to be in this place again, Yeah.
And now what would you consider the worst financial decision you've ever made?
The worst financial decision I ever made. No, man, like I said, I'm sorry, man, I'm really digging in my head, trying to figure out a time. But like I said, I think I was always, when it came to money and finances, I never wanted to dig myself into a hole, pretty much. So I guess when it comes to that, like you said, living paycheck to paycheck, it was just the fact of falling behind a little bit, or even sometimes spending a little too much, but then at the end I didn't have much. Does that answer your question? Yeah. So it was a fact of like, you know what? I don't need this right now. I'm just gonna start putting money away for my future.
Okay. All right, sounds good. Now, how would you describe your relationship with money?
So, okay. So here I guess I'll switch it a little, go in a different direction. So, I think we all love money, right? As human beings, we know that we need money. Sometimes I feel that people can go to extremes with money. So money is a tool, right? It's obviously something that we need, to get by in this life. We need money to survive. But sometimes people tend to idolize money a little too much, right? And sometimes when that happens, some people can become impatient, especially coming from, I would say, growing up where I grew up, and I saw this a lot, where people got impatient and they went to extremes to get money, doing illegal things and of that sort, or women even degrading themselves and doing other things that probably aren't very, ethical, and so I guess with that, I know that there's a line that I don't want to cross, and so as I got older, I'm a Christian and I believe in God, and I've gotten a lot closer to God, and the closer I've gotten to God and the more I've gotten to know God, the more I fall in love with Him and realize that these things are just secondary, and so yes, of course it's important. So my relationship with money would be described more as it's a tool, but I would never want to make it like an idol. It's something that I need, of course, but it doesn't come first for me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I figure we could say that you have a neutral position on this, which is good. I like how you have your balance between your religion and also how you bring the money aspect of it. So very unique. Would you consider that you're comfortable with your current financial situation?
In the moment, right now, yes. I don't have everything I want, but I have everything I need. But definitely within the next 5 to 10 years, I don't plan on being where I'm currently at. So, in 5 years, I will not be comfortable where I'm at now, but in the moment, I'm okay.
You have your goals, so that's good. If you could go back in time and change one financial decision, which one would it be and why?
If I could go back in time, I think what I would do is really just follow through with school. I went to college twice and I dropped out twice.
What were you studying the first time?
Business.
And the second time?
Theology.
Oh, wow. Did you acquire some debt on that?
I paid it off.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
Yeah, I paid it off, but I did, I did. Yeah, to answer your question.
Okay. So that you would go, I'm so sorry, I interrupted you. You were saying that you would go back in time and then get your business degree.
Get my business degree and really focus on my education. I allowed a lot of things in my life to distract me, which, and even in seasons of my life, it was money, you know, but it wasn't in the most ethical way too, you know. So I think because even then I was impatient at times, you know. So I would go back and gone to school, done things the right way, stuck things out, and I feel that if I would have done that, I'd be in a much better place today.
Sounds good. Yeah, I mean, definitely, like you mentioned, you know, previously, your grandfather said that the more you know, the more powerful you are, or something along those lines. So, I mean, it's never too late. You know, you can always go back. You can always change your career. You can always change direction. As long as you have a plan you execute it, I think you'll be good to go. So, alrighty, we're going to go over our first section, our first segment called Would You Rather. I'm going to give you this one, and then you're going to have to pick 5 numbers, one at a time. Once you select it, you can just toss it to the side, okay? Whenever you're ready.
Okay, so 12.
12. David, would you rather marry someone rich who cheats on you once, or someone with no money who is faithful?
Probably someone with no money who's faithful. I'd rather have a genuine person, because again, you know, money comes and goes, man.
Definitely. Yeah, pretty straightforward answer. And I mean, yeah, I was expecting that from you, so that's perfect. Let's go with the second one.
7.
7. Would you rather never have to worry about money or never have to worry about your health again?
Never have to worry about my health again, because if I'm healthy, I can go out and make moves and still make money. So,
Right, definitely. I mean, you're coming from the health sector, so totally makes sense. All right, let's go for the third one.
I mean, money can't buy health all the time, you know. Number 1.
Number 1. I like this question a lot. Would you rather pay for everything in pennies for the rest of your life or pay double with your credit card for every purchase?
I'd rather pay everything in pennies for the rest of my life. For the rest of my life?
Yeah. So even if you want to get a house, imagine you have to go to the bank and ask for the pennies.
Okay, hold on. So would I rather pay for everything in pennies for the rest of my life or
Use a credit card.
and have to pay double?
Double, yeah, for everything.
Yeah, I'll stick with the pennies.
All right, let's go with the fourth one.
11.
11. Would you rather go back in time to fix your biggest financial mistake or be able to see into the future how everything turned out in the end?
No, I'll go back in time.
Okay. All right. Anything to complement that answer? No?
Is that it? Was that the 5?
We have one more.
Oh, okay.
One.
Yeah, I mean, I would rather do that. I don't want to peek into the future and see how things turned out. And you could always, I guess, change the future or make a better future for yourself with the decision that you're making. So, yeah, past is better.
All right. Let's go with the last one then.
9.
9. Would you rather work from home while a rock band is playing in your garage for your whole shift, or work at the office where you cannot leave your desk other than to eat or to use the restroom, but your boss is super nice?
Yeah, I'll do the office. I've done that before.
So now let's go over the second segment. This is what we call it, What Do You Think? This one is mostly about opinions and thoughts on money. Same exercise where you're going to go ahead and pretty much bring one at a time, and we're going to do 5 questions. So whenever you're ready.
16.
16. What do you think? What is the best way to invest money?
I guess when it comes down to that, you know, one of the things I always thought about would be a really cool thing to do is to open up kind of like a cafe.
Okay.
Maybe sell pastries and stuff, you know, but something unique where, you know, kind of have like an open night type thing, like a jazzy type atmosphere. You know, I feel like Tucson doesn't really have something like that. So maybe we'll go into something like that, you know.
You know what would be good too? If you could open a burrito shop. Imagine. That would be a great legacy too.
Yeah, but that would be, you know, my burritos aren't as good as my mom. So,
Okay.
and I'm not as good as a cook as you are. So,
Thank you. All right, let's go over the second one then.
18.
18. At what point in time should we move out of our parents' house?
I think everyone is different. I lost my grandparents when I was pretty much 16. I kind of had to get it together quick. I didn't have the luxury of leaning on my mom or my grandparents when I was younger, but as I got older. So I think that, when I think about my kids, I would hope that, once they're done with high school, that they want to pursue an education and go to college. But I'm not just going to throw my kids out either, I'm going to try to help them out as much as I can. But I think that it's good for kids while they're in high school that they're thinking about their future and what they want to do. So I'd say probably between the ages of 18 and 22.
Okay. Perfect. I like how you gave us a range. So really, really good. Let's go with the third one.
13.
13. Is it bad to live paycheck to paycheck?
Man, I don't think anybody wants to live paycheck to paycheck. For me, yes, I don't want to live paycheck to paycheck. So is it bad? I'm going to say yes.
Yes, this was a really good question for you because you've been through a similar situation. So you've seen both sides of the coin. And yeah, like you mentioned, it's definitely something you're not comfortable with. So.
Right.
All right, let's go with the fourth one.
19.
19. What percentage of our check should we put into savings every month?
I would say at least probably between 18 and 25%.
Are you currently doing something along that?
Mm-hmm.
So you actually go, oh my God, to 18 to 25%.
Yeah.
Wow. That's really good. So you've been,
well, maybe it's a little higher, but
oh wow.
Yeah. So I'm telling you, man, I got plans and I got goals. So
that's great.
I want to be sore, but these are just things that I've picked up throughout time, and I'm like, okay, so by the time I'm this age, by the time I'm here, I want to be able to live like this. I don't want to worry about money, because I do want to, I do feel like I'm called to be a minister. And so I don't want to make money from that. I just feel that that's something that I need to do. I'm passionate about doing it, but I don't believe in making money out of that. So I need to have a plan of how I'm going to take care of myself and take care of my family while I'm doing that.
All right, let's go with the last one. 4. What do you think, David? Are student loans a good or a bad investment?
I think student loans are they're supposed to be a good investment. Or what do you mean by good investment?
Yeah, so there's no right or wrong answer. It's just based on your own perspective. Mm-hmm. So I think it was a really, really good question for you because in your case, you've been in school 2 times. Mm-hmm. So just on your own opinion, would you consider that was a good investment or that was a bad investment? How do you see that as of right now?
I think I wasn't ready for both times. It was something that I felt like I need to do this, so I'm going to force myself to do it, but I didn't have the time to do it. But I think it is a good investment. So everyone should definitely do it. And this is why I believe that it's good to do things when you're younger, or when you don't have kids, because you have more time on your hands, And I say this a lot there's a particular person who's still living with their parents, doesn't have any responsibilities, still young enough, and I tell them like, hey man, take advantage of your situation, and go to school. This person is passionate about certain things, go to school for this. And take advantage of the time that you have right now. You don't have to pay bills. You don't have any kids. You really don't have any responsibilities. So do it now. So when the time comes, you'll be prepared and ready.
Excellent. Finally, is there anything else that you would like to share with the audience?
I think it's good for us to really, I'm going to be transparent, man. I believe that we're in this life for a limited time. and I think everyone is trying to figure things out in life. And life is short. You blink your eyes and 10 years have gone by. And there's a lot of important things, that obviously we need to be taking care of: education, finances, our family. But I believe, man, that, and I'm coming from a spiritual aspect, that it wasn't until I began to really seek God, diligently with all of my heart, that I was able to be more grounded, and genuine in the decisions that I began to make. It's, there's a verse in the Bible that says, "Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and everything else will be added unto you." And before that, in that chapter, it talks about, don't worry about tomorrow. Let tomorrow worry for itself. If God takes care of the birds in the air and he dresses the grass, how much more will he take care of you if you are of more value? And then it gets to that: seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and then everything else will be added unto you. And that's what I did. And there was things in areas of my life where I was like, I don't even know where to go or where to begin or what to do. But I'm going to take it one step at a time, and I'm going to trust God. And I'm going to leave this in his hands. And I did that, and God's never failed me. And just in everything, it's just things just begin to unfold. So as long as you're doing what you have to do, it's not that I'm just going to sit back and say, "Oh, I'm just going to let God take care of it and I'm not going to do anything." I mean, we have to do what we have to do, but also not stressing so much about it, and knowing that, man, if I have him, he's in control of all things, I'm going to be good. And I've been living like that for the past almost 5 years now. And I've never had so much peace, and I can even say success, because I have more of a sound mind now, because I feel like I'm able to think clearer and I can make wiser choices. So that's the best advice that I believe, or I feel that I can give anyone.
David, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Please support the channel by subscribing, commenting, and liking the video. The question of the day is the following: let me know your opinions, thoughts, comments, and constructive criticism in the comment section, and I will see you guys on the next video.